Okay, welcome everyone to today's eRequesting Technical Design Group. I'd just like to kick off with an acknowledgement of country. So we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we all gather today. We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We acknowledge the First Peoples as the first scientists, educators and healers. So big day today. Our usual business we'll go through as we do at the start of every meeting. Then we'll get Jamie to take us through our Australian Fire Maturity Model Level 1 review. So that's a really important part of going to ballot. As we're going to ballot for working standard, we need to get all of our artefacts in the Fire IG from draft 0, which they currently are, up to a level of 1, so we can take them to ballot. So that's really important. I've got an arbitrary 30 minutes there. I'm not sure how long it'll take us, but it's an important thing we get through today. Then just going to show everyone the variance statement that we have in the IG as well, which is also forms part of the requirement for ballot, and then a couple of change requests to round out the session today as well. So we'll see how we go with time, but we'll move into usual business. So we have the minutes from the last meeting, which I will bring up. Let's see, I'll put it in the chat as well if you want to have a look. So these minutes were sent out about a week ago with the agenda for today. We've got the recording, we've got the minutes with the decisions we've got in here and some action items there at the bottom. Just wondering if Talwinder. I did briefly talk to you about the action item. We weren't sure whether it was an action item for you or not. There was one down the bottom here about proposing a service request, a consent link if required. Did you, were you happy that being an action item, or did you want that one taken out?
No, I'm good.
Yeah. So we can remove that as an action item. I wasn't sure because we didn't get back to me, but apart from that, does anyone else have any comments or questions about the minutes? If not, would anyone like to make a motion to approve these minutes?
Michael Osborne.
Thanks, Michael. Do we have a second?
I'm happy to second that, Michael. Rosemary Villado.
Thanks, Rosemary. I'll launch a poll to approve these minutes. Okay, hopefully you can see a poll now to approve these minutes. If you weren't in the meeting or haven't reviewed the minutes, you can abstain, but please vote if you have. We've had about 67% of people voted. It'd be good if everyone could include their vote just to get that number up a bit. Okay, good number now. So I'll just end that poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we have 13 affirmative plus 1 in the chat, so 14 affirmative, 0 negative, and 13 abstain. So that motion is passed. Thank you. Jump into the next item. So action items. There's an action item from the 6th of June, which was a proposal on developing how to represent non-urgent results needed by a specific date. So it was something that was brought up on the 6th of June meeting. We have had a bit of a chat about that in the co-chairs. We'll probably continue that chat, see if it's something we need to bring to the TDG. So that's still open and active. I think we just talked about the second one. It was an action item on the last meeting, but it's not something we need to track. Anyone can bring a proposal to the TDG at any time. So it's not something I don't think we need to track that. If Talwinda or anyone else has a proposal they want to bring, they can just discuss it with the co-chair and get it on the agenda for a meeting. So we'll just close that action item. And then the new Zoom meeting link that was in the last meeting, I obviously sent it out because there's people in the meeting. So well done. Some other updates. So this is where we're at with our ballot timeline. So we're getting close now. We had the Spark testing event. Was it last week now? Bit of a blur. We had that in Brisbane. On the firework group yesterday, we lodged our notice of intent to ballot for eRequesting. So that was lodged and accepted by the firework group. So we're moving towards ballot now. Today, our 3rd of July, we'll just provide a bit of an update on what happened at the testing event. We're going to do our AFMM1 review, look at the variance statement and any other change requests. Then our next meeting, any informative content or other minor changes that we have, we'll go through in that meeting. And then the meeting after that is our ballot process 101. We will walk through the ballot process and a final review of the IG. So these are our last 3 meetings before going to ballot. And the ballot snapshot will be taken on the 4th of August and ballot opens on the 11th of August. Getting close now. So on that, if you want to participate in the ballot, so it's not just either the requesting ballot, there'll be a ballot on AU Core Release 2. There'll also be one for AU Base, and there's also another one for AU Patient Summary, which is a ballot for comment. So to participate in those ballots, you need to be a current HL7 Australian member, and you then need to sign up for the ballot between the sign-up period, which is 6th of July to the 3rd of August. So I think there, the date on the bottom, you have to join HL7 Australia before the 6th of July. So if you do plan on participating, you do need to sign up if you're not already a member by that date. And then you need to register to participate in the ballot in that window between 6th of July and 3rd of August. There's a QR code there. There is also a which takes you to this Confluence page, which is this one, which I'll put in the chat. And that gives you the details about the requirements to participate in this ballot period. Back. An update on the Spark testing event. So we had the event on the 24th of June in Brisbane. It was a combined testing event run by Spark. We were testing AU Core, eRequesting, as well as patient summary, and also smart forms. There was a smart track as well. So we had 13 different organisations, like 37 people, and we've got some results there about what we did. So we had 9 systems for AU Core, 7 for patient summary, 3 for eRequesting, and 2 for smart forms. So it was a really good opportunity where we had lots of people testing different types of systems in the room, and had support there from Spark people. You can see lots of arrows in the room, different people connecting to different things. From an eRequesting point of view, down the bottom there, we had HealthLink, Sonic, and our Spark test server that we were testing between. A bit of a summary of what we had there. We had 1 placer, 1 filler, and 2 eRequesting servers with Sonic, HealthLink, and Spark there. And give an idea of the sort of coverage. So the Spark testing server had been fully implemented with the latest release of eRequesting. It was loaded with test data. We also had the Sonic server there as well, with test data in it. So these are the profiles of how many systems tested the different profiles. So you can see there we had most of the profiles tested. And the only thing we really didn't test was we didn't have a patient, someone acting as a patient system. But that was the first time we've kind of done any formal testing of eRequesting, recording results. This is something that we'll do more of in the future, where we're wanting to get to, if we want to get our artifacts to a fire maturity level of level 2, we need testing of 3 independent systems covering more than 80% of the content. So in order to do that, we need to have formal results. So we're only targeting AFMM1 at the moment. So this is really just showing that we have exercised them, we've looked at them, we could implement them, but that's good. If you want to do testing, you don't have to do it just part of a testing event. There is a test page that we now have for eRequesting, which I'll jump to. Chat. So this page just talks about testing. If you want to participate, you can do testing at any time. There are spreadsheets down the bottom here, I think, that we need to attach, which essentially here gives you the type of coverage, so we can record the coverage that you're testing with the systems. If you're participating in testing, more than happy to include your logos on here to say that you've been testing the system, contributing to testing of eRequesting. And we'll just maintain this over time as we have connectathons, Spark testing events and the like to show what sort of coverage we're getting of testing the IG. Okay. So the next agenda item is our fire maturity model 1 review. Jamie, did you want me to share? You want to take over?
If it's okay, I'll take over and share.
Yep, that sounds good.
Thanks. Right, I'll just double check that you can see the AFMM1 review slide.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Okay. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name's Jamie Murdoch and I'm one of the Fire IG authors. So today I'm going to be going through a proposal to move all of the AU eRequesting artifacts from draft 0 to AFMM1. So this is part of the path, as Michael mentioned already, to ballot and then the eventual publication of the R1 spec early next year. So I know this has sort of been discussed recently in the firework group and AU core meeting, so it may be repetition for some people and may be fairly well known, but I'm just going to run through the process, I guess, and a quick overview of the Australian fire maturity model, just so that everybody is aware and on the same page. And I'll just pop a link in the chat to the fire maturity model assessment documentation. All of the AU artifacts are assessed against the Australian fire maturity model and assigned a level that indicates to implementers where the artifact is in terms of maturity and stability. So it's relevant for all artifacts, any structure definitions defined in the IG, value sets, code systems, the capability statements, actor definitions, search parameters, and then the actual IG itself. So any artifacts that are draft 0, which is where all of the eRequesting artifacts are at right now. Draft 0 is a starting position for the development of an artifact, and it indicates that things are in progress, they're not stable, and that it's maybe something to investigate or play with or develop further. And the requirement for draft 0 as part of the AFMM is only that it's published on the CI build. So essentially to say that it's published and it's in progress, it's being worked on. Because draft 0 artifacts aren't, I guess, indicated as complete by the draft 0 status, they're not considered substantially complete and not published in an official publication of a working standard. So for the eRequesting artifacts to be published as part of R1 in January, we need them to be moved up to the AFMM1 status to say that we've agreed that they're substantially complete, essentially. So the next level in the AFMM process is AFMM1, which the definition is on the slide there. So this indicates that the responsible group, which is the eRequesting TDG, has agreed that the artifact is substantially complete and ready for implementation. So by that, I mean that it's technically sound and the group agrees that it's at a good enough starting point to continue testing and refining and maturing over time. So it's not necessarily indicating that it's stable and complete and that's it, but it's I guess drawing a line in the sand as a starting point for further refining. So then the maturity model goes on beyond that. The levels continuing up to 5, and then each increasing level indicates a higher level of maturity and stability, and then reaches normative eventually, which is essentially saying that it's stable, mature, and unlikely to change. So eRequesting is just looking to move the artifacts to AFMM1 for ballot, indicating that they're complete enough to be published as part of R1. And then once has agreed on a position for the artifacts today, this will be presented to the firework group at the next meeting on the 16th of July to review and endorse as AFMM1. And from that point, we can update the artifacts in the IG. So looking at the criteria for AFMM1 in the maturity model assessment, so no errors or warnings that haven't been accepted, and the responsible work group has indicated that they consider it to be substantially complete and ready for implementation. So for the errors or warnings, these come from the QA report in the implementation guide, and I'll pop the link to that in the chat. And I'll just take us there to have a quick look. Can I just check that you can see the eRequesting IG? Yep. So if you're navigating, I've put the link direct to the QA report in the chat, but if you're navigating from the actual implementation guide, you can scroll all the way down and there's a QA report link. And that will take you to the QA report for the eRequesting IG. And if you scroll down, it shows the dependencies and eventually comes down to this summary section. So the QA report is generated by the IG publisher tooling and indicates any errors, warnings, or info messages on each artifact. So for example, for the eRequesting filler actor, we can see that there's no errors, warnings, and only one info message. And say, for example, the communication request reason code system has 2 warnings on it. And then you can click down to the actual artifact and see the warning or error or information message in more detail. So it gives the path to the path that the warning or error is referring to, whether it's an error, warning, or information message, and then some explanation of that as well. I guess it's just important to note that it may look overwhelming given there can be lots of warnings or information messages in particular in the QA report, and that doesn't necessarily mean that there are any issues or problems that need to be fixed. It doesn't mean that there's any problems with the structure definition. It could be caused, or they could be caused by things that are outside of our control. So it might be a tooling error or a behavior that we have no control over. It could be caused by terminology that's external to our implementation guide. It could be a best practice recommendation as well that we may or may not decide to adopt, and that would likely come from HL7AU policy level. So just useful to know that they're there. They can flag things that may need to be reviewed, and absolutely they can flag errors if they are present. But for the most part, the warnings in particular are there just to flag something for review, to then assess if any action needs to be taken. in relation to the information messages that are here, these, while we do look at them as IG authors and they are useful, they're not part of the AFMM1 consideration. So we won't be looking at those today. And I also just want to flag that there are lots of warnings in the IG that have already been accepted by the firework group. So just flagging that, because you can see that there are lots of warnings there. And the majority of those have been addressed, and I'll quickly flag those on the next slide. I'll just pause there. Are there any questions relating to the QA report before I continue on? Okay. So back to looking at where we are at in this process. So in terms of the QA report, we've done an analysis, and there are 2 warnings that I'll address in a minute that the TDG needs to review and look to accept. And in terms of the artifacts being at a point where they're substantially complete, so any artifacts that have been added to the IG have gone through the TDG, I guess, discussion and review process, and an agreement has been formed to add them in the state that they're in. They have also, depending on when they were added to the IG, have gone through different iterations of testing. So whether that is at the recent test event or the connectathons that have happened over the last, I guess, 6 or 8 months. And some of them have also been through the ballot for comment process and resolution of reconciliation. So depending on when they're added, they've been through different levels of testing, but we would consider that the artifacts are substantially complete. So the process for today is to take a look at the QA report and for the group to have a position on whether it's acceptable, and include any rationale for warnings or errors that we are looking to accept, of which there's 2 of those, and assert that we think that the artifacts are substantially complete and ready to move to AFMM1 level. And then, as I mentioned before, then we will refer that to the firework group for a final review and endorsement. So this is an overview of where all of the eRequesting artifacts are at right now. So any artifacts that have a dark green square, so they have 0 errors and 0 warnings. So given we feel that the eRequesting artifacts are substantially complete, we can say that these fulfill the criteria for AFMM1, so no errors, no warnings, and they're substantially complete. For the ones that are light green in color, no warnings for these, and these are the artifacts where there are warnings present, no errors, and for where there's warnings, these warnings have been already accepted by the firework group, and they fit into 2 categories or groups, I suppose. One is relating to the resolution of NCTS terminology, and the other is related to a new warning that's come from a tooling change relating to canonical pinning of versions for particularly relevant for the eRequesting IG is for terminology resources. So those have been accepted by the firework group already. And so because they've been accepted, again, for these light green ones, we can consider that these artifacts are substantially complete and have no errors and warnings that have been accepted by the firework group already, so fulfill the criteria for AFMM1. Then we've got the 2 warnings that I mentioned previously, which come from the eRequesting pathology request profile. So you can see there that there's 5 warnings on this profile, and 3 of those fit into that canonical pinning group, and 2 are unique to eRequesting, and those are the ones that we will be reviewing and looking to accept today. But before I do that, given the ones in green that either have no warnings or warnings that have been accepted by the firework group, I would like to propose a motion that these artifacts are moved to AFMM 1. And I'll just pause there for any questions before we continue on.
Hi, no, I'm happy to second that motion. You certainly demonstrated a good rigor here, going through each of those artifacts, and do recognizing that warnings are always helpful, and our ability to make those small incremental changes is key going forward anyway. So it's good practice for us to do that, and yeah, it's a good set of stuff we got here. Well done. Yeah.
That's good. Thanks. So we've got a motion from Jamie and a second from David. Are there any other questions or comments before I launch a poll for that vote? No. Okay. So just launched a poll to accept that motion, to accept all the ones with 0 errors, 0 warnings, and artifacts with warnings that have already been accepted by the firework group.
And just to clarify, I've just popped on the next slide the same thing in a list just for ease of documentation. So on the left-hand side, the artifacts with no errors or no warnings. And then on the right-hand side, the artifacts with no errors and then warnings that have been accepted, just in a list form.
We've got about 60% of people vote, so it'd be good if others could contribute their vote.
I guess it's always good to see when it's a warning about a value set, as in, geez, we've got to get another value in there or something. Or
For the warnings that we currently have on the code systems and value sets, they come because the metadot profile claims conformance to an NCTS code system or value set definition. And because there isn't an NCTS, there's no NPM package for the NCTS via IG, we can't resolve those. So that's what those warnings that have previously been accepted are referring to.
So his hand up.
Yeah, I see Andy. His hand.
I was just going to, I'm all good, but I just wonder if we, as we minute this, we can note the version of the publisher that we're using with this agreement, because as the published version changes, the warnings change as well, and the errors change, and so it's just, I think, useful to peg it to a particular publisher version.
Thanks. Yeah.
So I've seen that there was part of in the toolset where it was possible to put in dismissal reasons when the publishing tool chain runs through. Is that being used here? I thought that that might be useful to document the reasons why these warnings have been dealt with.
Yep, definitely. It hasn't yet because we haven't accepted them yet, I guess, as a group, but yes, they will definitely be. And you would see that if you wanted to take a look in the AU base IG QA report as an example. So there will be warnings that have been, I guess, accepted with an explanation of why. Yeah, so that will take place after we have the agreement and endorsement from the firework group.
I'll just suppose we've got over 80% now, so I'll end that poll and see the results. So we have 21 plus 1 in the chat, so 22 affirmative, 0 negative, and 7 abstain. So that motion has passed.
So I'll continue on now for the 2 warnings that we are looking to accept as a group. So these 2 warnings are unique to the eRequesting IG and haven't yet been accepted by the FIRE work group just because of the nature of them. So they come from the eRequesting pathology request profile. And so there's two warnings. They're essentially repeating. One is on the diff and one is on the snapshot, but they are indicating that the definition for the element service request.code binds to the RCPA SPIA requesting pathology terminology reference set, which is flagged as experimental, but the AU eRequesting pathology request structure is not labeled as experimental. So in this instance, the warning is flagging for us to review, I suppose, and make certain that we are happy with the binding. There's no issues with the structure definition of the pathology request profile. The binding is correct. It is to the value set that was agreed by the TDG. This value set is published by NCTS, so any change to the value set, so removing that experimental flag, is outside the scope of the eRequesting IG. We can't make any change because we're not the ones publishing the value set. So we've raised a change request with NCTS tooling support to remove this flag. But I guess just to give some context to the warning, although it's saying that, or I guess, although it's warning that the value set is experimental, it's a consideration, but it is not necessarily something that would stop us from binding to an experimental value set. It indicates that the value set is not stable and may be subject to change or further development. As I said, we can still bind to it, and us binding to it can, I guess, further solidify or allow for further development of that value set through feedback and testing. And we may want to in future have a plan to revise the binding, which is currently preferred, to a higher strength when the value set is finalized. Not necessary, but just, I guess, something to consider. So overall, this is something that we would not consider as something that would require a change. Yeah, I'll pause there. Andy, I can see that your hand is up.
Yeah, I think what the warning is actually, the way I read it is, it's actually questioning whether the actual structure definition should be experimental as well.
Yes.
Given it's got a dependency on an experimental value set, should it actually, to the experimental actually be passed up the chain?
Yes.
Because you're depending upon something experimental, but the thing you're proposing is not experimental, and that's kind of the mismatch.
Yes, that's correct. And we would not consider the pathology request profile to be experimental, so there's no need for us to make a change there. But yes, that's absolutely right. It's highlighting the mismatch between the two. I'll just pause there. Is there any other questions before I continue on? Okay, so given we have reviewed these two warnings and we, I guess, can accept that, yes, there is a difference in one being the value set being experimental and the profile not, which is correct. We can review that, and I would like to propose a motion that we accept these two warnings that are listed on the slide and then move the AU eRequesting pathology request profile to AFMM1.
Jamie, we have a motion from Jamie. Would anyone like to second that motion?
Can I just ask whether you're proposing to discuss what I assume is the Ranscar value set is also experimental?
I don't think it is experimental.
It's clearly got to, because it's not complete.
It's not flagged as experimental though, so it's not picking up. The publisher's not picking it up. It's not
That's
flagged.
probably more a problem than with the Ranscar value set, because it can't be non-experimental given its status, surely.
Shall we address this one first, and then we can have a discussion about that?
I'm just thinking that we need I think we need to be consistent in our approach to both of them. And if the Ranscar one was experimental and is clearly, given it's not being really used, and therefore it is legitimately should be probably experimental, you could argue that the RCPA one is, potentially not experimental, so I don't really have an issue with that. But would we override that? Because I think to ignore the inherited experimental dependency, I guess in general, are we now setting a precedent to say if we are dependent upon something experimental, that doesn't matter?
This is only in this particular error for this particular artifact that we're agreeing here. So it's not a blanket something experimental, we will accept that warning. It is only this warning on this profile that we are accepting here as part of this motion. So if this warning pops up on another profile, we would have to go through this process as well. So,
and just on top of that, Michael, perhaps we can take an action item, maybe for Michael Osborne to follow up with NCTS to discuss whether or not that Ranscar value set should be experimental.
I'm happy to do that.
does that satisfy you, Andy?
It's fine.
We're still looking for a second for this motion. Someone. Are there any other concerns?
I'm happy to second this one.
Thanks, David. Are there any other questions or comments before I launch a vote to accept this motion? No. I will launch. Oh. So this is to accept the two warnings on screen for the AU eRequesting pathology request. Yeah, we just need a few more people to vote just to get participation a bit. Okay, I might give that another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the poll. So we have 18. Just trying to see, was that +1 in the chat? Was looking for it, there it goes. So that's 19 affirmative, 0 negative, and 9 abstain. So that motion has passed.
All right, that's it from me. So as I mentioned kind of early on, now this will be taken to the firework group. The firework group will review just as we have done basically, and determine if they would like to endorse it as all artifacts as AFMM1. And then once we have that firework group endorsement, we can apply the changes in the IG. But yeah, that's it from me. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jamie. Well, I will share my screen back then. Okay, next part was just a variance statement review. So this is really just informative, just to let people know that it's there and what it is and what it's for. So this is just really an informative section. So if you've got questions and the like, please speak up. So in all HL7 AU IGs, there's a requirement for us to have a variance statement that states our variance, which is obvious, but I'll show you, paste the link in the chat, and that is obviously the wrong link. Interesting. I'll get the right link. Paste that in the chat. Make it a bit bigger. Okay. Hopefully, can everyone see that screen now? Make sure I'm sharing correctly.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So in the IG, I put the link in the chat. This is our variance statement. You'll see this variance statement on other IGs. You'll see it on AU Core. You'll see it on AU Base. You'll see it on AU Patient Summary. So this is a requirement for HL7 Australia published via implementation guides. So the requirement is that we should be using AU Core profiles, and we should be using AU Base profiles and extensions, and that we shall include this AU variance statement. So this is a requirement. It was something as part of our notice of intent to ballot we had to include to show that we had this variance statement. And the idea here is to show that we're using AU Base and AU Core. I might jump back to the relationship to other specifications on here. There's not a bad diagram here that sort of talks about the fire standard, the international fire standard being platform specific. Then AU Base has the Australian realm definitions. So this is the things like our Medicare card number, IHI, those sorts of things. So things that are specific to the Australian realm. And then we have AU Core, which is the Australian common sort of components for implementation in Australia. And then we have our use case specific, where we might have provider directory, in our case, eRequesting. So the further down you go, the less restrictive they are, and the further up to a use case problem space, they're more specific. So this is where we should be using the international standard, AU Base that's on top of it, AU Core that's on top of that, and then we get into our eRequesting. So this variance statement talks about where we may have variance, where we may have done things different to AU Base or AU Core. So what we're stating here for eRequesting is that the eRequesting IG has no variance. It's fully compliant with the AU Base Fire Implementation Guide version 6, the CI build at the moment. So this, when we do actually take a snapshot of publication, we'll have the specific version that we have no variance from. But then what we also state is we are doing things in addition to AU Base. So these things that aren't profiled in AU Base, but we're doing in eRequesting. So in our communication requests, we have our abstract communication request. We'll get a copy to patient and urgent provider. Under consent, we have the My Health Record consent withdrawal. Under document reference, we have our clinical context document reference. And tasks, we have our abstract again, our diagnostic request task, our task group, our communication request task. We have a couple of extensions. We have our display sequence that's used on service request, and our fasting precondition. And then as well, we have our supporting info SearchParameter. So very similar for AU Core. We have no variance. So we're fully compliant with AU Core and with the current version 2 CI build. And then again, none of these profiles are profiled in AU Core. It's the same list. We have got the list here of all the things that are in addition to that. So this gives the fire work group and others, anyone reviewing this profile can look at this and go, well, what's the difference? Where have we varied in any way from AU base and AU core? One thing of note here, this we're going to talk about it shortly. The change request is around supporting info. That is something we've done additionally, but it's something that probably lives in AU base. It's not use case specific to eRequesting, so we do have a change request to talk about that. But that's where you can find out this information. It's easy to look at this and go, well, should the copy to communication request really live in AU base or AU core or somewhere else? So it provides a way of understanding that. And that's a requirement of us lodging a notice of intent to ballot. We maintain this whenever we add something to the IG through the TDG. It's looked at for conformance with AU base and AU core, and this is updated as we go. So this is maintained through the life cycle of changes in eRequesting, and we'll continue to do so as we add things over time. So that was more just to make everyone aware of that that's there, and that is a requirement for us, what it's there for and what it is. Does anyone have any questions on that? Fairly straightforward. Okay, well, I might jump into a couple of change requests now. The first one here is around that supporting info search parameter that we've shown in our variance statement. It's something we've done in addition to AU base and AU core. So there's a proposal here saying that the supporting info search parameter was introduced to the eRequesting IG via that JIRA item to enable include searches on service requests supporting info. Although introduced for the eRequesting use case, the supporting info search parameter may have general applicability across any context where service request supporting info is used. Therefore, to promote reuse, consistency, and alignment across Australian fire implementation guides, this proposal recommends referring the supporting info search parameter to the fire working group for potential inclusion in AU base. So the idea is we should push things further upstream rather than having them contained solely within the eRequesting IG, where there may be broader use, where they can be applied more broadly in an Australian context. It would make more sense to move that up to AU base. Do I have any questions on that? Would anyone like to motion that that is a good idea, that we move that or look to move that to base? Given I raised this, I would motion, but I can't as a chair. So, procedural issue there. Oh, David, are you talking?
I am, yeah. Could you? Yeah, I'm happy to raise a motion to accept that. So
Thanks, David. Is there anyone who wants to second that? Yeah. Is that you seconding, or is that you asking a question?
I wanted to ask whether I'm allowed to, given that this is my first session. But
no, you're allowed to. Anyone
from
yesterday,
we
normally
it sounded sensible, so I would second it.
fantastic. Yes, we encourage rigorous discussion. Sometimes people are a bit quiet, which is a bit unfortunate.
Yeah, that's right. Every opinion is valid. So, and there, given that, are there any questions or comments on this? Any other thoughts? Just do I do them? Sure. This is just a referral. It will go to the fire work group, then they'll assess it and decide. But I think from an eRequesting point of view, it just kind of makes sense that it becomes an AU-based thing rather than ours to maintain and look up. All right, I will launch a poll for that motion. Okay, I've got a good number of votes there. So add that in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I'll end the poll. We have 22 plus 1 in the chat, 23 affirmative, 0 negative, and 6 abstained. So that motion has passed. Thank you. Back to the next one. So this is something, the second one came up in the test event that we had in Brisbane. So the supporting info search parameter was implemented in the eRequesting test server, the Spark test server. It was working fine and the like. But it was brought up about the conformance requirement on it. And I will launch that. So in the context here is the supporting info search parameter for service request was introduced into eRequesting FIRE IG by 5.1005. Currently has a requesting server actor conformance requirements of should for both the implementation of the search parameter and for the include service request supporting info. This proposal recommends updating the AU eRequesting server actor conformance requirements from a should to a shall, so that the supporting info search and include capability is consistently implemented and client systems can depend on its availability when required. And this change is supported by a successful implementation in the eRequesting Spark test server for the June Spark testing event. So if we have a look at the previous ticket where we introduced this, try again. So we introduced it so that to support and include on service request supporting info, so you can pull in things like pregnancy status and the clinical context with a search for the diagnostic request. So this is doing, I'm searching for a service request, maybe with that ID, and I'm going to include the supporting info, which will pull in the pregnancy status, pull in the clinical context if it's available there. And we made the server conformance on this a should. And at that time, we weren't 100% sure about this, given this is a new search parameter that hadn't been implemented before, whether it was okay or not. So the server conformance is proposed to should rather than shall to allow flexibility in implementation. This recognizes there may be unforeseen challenges in supporting the search parameter across all server environments. So we did successfully implement it for the testing environment. So the argument now is to change that from a should to a shall is around the having it consistently implemented so client systems can depend on it. If it was a should and a server hasn't implemented and you've built your client system to use the include and the server doesn't support it, then you have to have an alternative way of getting it. And if you can't rely on servers having implemented it, then you can't rely on being able to run that search, which makes it difficult to build software when it can't rely on that being available. So that's the difference, is about all our other search parameters as part of the server capability statement are all required. The server has to implement all our search parameters. This one was a should just because of that uncertainty about implementation, but we have been able to implement it and without any issues. So this would look to change it from a should to a shall. On this though, this is a revisit if we want to do it. So we've previously made a decision that it was a should. So we don't want to keep bringing up things and changing them when we've already made decisions. So we do have to abide by the HL7 AU decision-making practices on this. So in order to do this, we actually have to have a motion to say, yes, we should revisit it and make it a shall. Then we have to have a second and 2/3 majority. And that's just to say, let's revisit it. So there's enough people in the TDG that think, yeah, it warrants change. If there's not that, then we just leave it as is and we don't investigate the change. And so this item was included in the agenda that went out a week ago. So there has been some notification that we were going to discuss it today. So we've kind of met this criteria, but I will leave it open to the TDG if anyone is interested in motioning that we revisit. This is not that we accept it, This is just saying a motion to say it warrants a revisit, that we should look at it, and then we would have a second vote for the actual decision on whether we change it again. So, like I said, it was brought up in the test event as probably should be a shall. If there's anyone in the TDG who would like to motion to revisit it, we can do that. And if not, we'll just move on. So it's entirely.
I would like to propose a motion that we reconsider this and that it becomes should rather than shall.
Oh, it's the other way around, shall rather than should. But this, the important thing is the revisit. That this motion is for the revisit. But thanks, Jamie.
Yeah.
Happy to second that, Michael Osborne.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and I will launch this poll. So this is just to say whether we're going to revisit, and we need a 6% majority. This is not a vote on the actual motion. This is just to say, are we going to revisit? So I will launch that poll. Got about 60% of people participating, not voting. So if just everyone can vote. If you're unsure, you can abstain. It's just good that we get as many people voting as possible in the meeting. Okay, I will end that poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Share results. Now these percentages are across all three. It's only the affirmative and the negative that actually counts to that 66% percentage. The abstains don't count. So we have 20 plus 1 in the chat, 21 affirmative and 1 negative. So we have reached that 66% majority, so we can revisit this item. Okay, thank you. And jump back. So I'll open the item again. So now we've decided we're okay to revisit. So now if we're interested, we can have a motion and a second to have a vote on this change as it's stated, which is changing the server conformance requirements from a should to a shall on that search parameter. So we will need a motion and a second if we're going to vote on this.
I would like to motion that we change the search parameter from should to shall.
Should to shall. Excellent. Thanks, Jake. Do we have a second?
I can motion that one. Or second it,
Okay.
sorry.
Yep. Thanks, Michael. Any other questions or comments on this before I launch? Okay, I will relaunch. Let that voting number creep up a bit. So 75%. So I'll end up poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we have 17 affirmative plus 1 in the chat. So it's 18 affirmative, 1 negative, and 7 abstain. So that motion has passed. Does the negative vote want to say why they voted negative? They don't have to, but if you're interested in sharing your thoughts. It's okay.
Hello, it's me. I just don't know the implications. Yeah, I thought it would be easier for the vendors to have this short. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
all. I guess I just don't really. I need more use cases or something so that I'm clear. It is absolutely necessary. Otherwise, it's make it a little bit more work or more effort for the vendor to implement this. That's all. Thank you.
I think, I mean, it is a good point though. I mean, as we get more implementation experience with this, we will make changes in the future. So at any point in time, we can go through this process of revisiting. If we're testing any part of the IG and we find that it's not working the way it needs to work, we can bring changes back to the TDG. We can go through this. If it was a previous decision, we can say we want to revisit it. Here's the reason why, and go through the TDG process of making changes. So yeah, anything we do, we're not stuck with for life. So it's the starting point of where we think we should be for starting, and then we can, as we get more implementation experience with it, refine it as we go. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
One more here, another one that came up as part of the test event. As when we were recording test results, we noticed that there was update interaction was missing for the filler. So we'll just bring up that change request. So the eRequesting filler capability statement does not include the update interaction for task resource type. To support fulfillment tracking, the filler needs to be able to update the status of task resources. It's therefore proposed that the AU eRequesting filler capability statement be updated to include the following interaction for the task resource type, and it shall support update. So I will show you what that looks like in the eRequesting IG. So under fire artifacts, we have actors and capabilities. And we have our placer, filler, patient, and server actors and their capability statements over here on the right. So I'll go to the placer capability statement. In the capability statement itself, it talks about all the different profiles and your obligations on them. And I'll just jump straight to the task one, which these are not alphabetical at the moment, which makes it difficult. There it is. Oh, I'm on the wrong one. Be on the filler. We go down to task. Okay. So you'll see here for the task profile, the resource conformance is shall. So the filler shall support this profile. And under here, we have our supported profiles of task group, diagnostic request, and communication request. But then over here on our interactions, we say should support read and search type. But this does not say that anything about the update interaction or the create. We wouldn't expect the filler to be creating the task, I don't think. We're expecting them to update the task. So they'll be updating the task status as it goes through fulfillment. So at the moment, this is saying you only need to support read or search. So this is saying that this is an important part of actually the fulfillment tracking in eRequesting. So adding into here that you shall support update of the task. And that was just as part of our testing. That's where the testing event worked well, where we were going through, just checking the testing of the different interactions and the like, and noticed that there was no update for the filler, and we'd expect them to be updating the task. Any questions or thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I was actually just writing an email, Michael. Hi, it's Adrian from Kestrel.
Hi.
I was just thinking about the status updates, and I mean, I know from my experience working on a broker that you can. I mean, there's no enforcement of any state flow, I guess, with the statuses. So, for example, if I set something at completed, I can then set it back to in progress straight away, which seems to be an invalid status change. So I was just wondering if there's I mean, should that state flow be something that is published or enforced even at the server level? I'm going off topic here a little bit, I think, but
it is a good topic. So what we're developing at the moment, it's currently in a draft state to go into the IG, is the guidance around that. So I'll just check. I don't think it's quite in yet. Guidance. No, it's not here, but I can show you the draft. Which, while we're not providing we are in a way providing the business rules, but not how to enforce them. So there is a page here. I'll find it. Requesting discussions and informative guidance, workplace state guidance. This is a draft. It's just being finalized at the moment, but this is the guidance, the idea of the guidance that we will put in the IG, which includes the state machine. Right. So this is our state machine.
Let me go and have a read of this, and I'll put feedback on the page if I have anything. Yeah.
Oh, I think we've got a bit of time, so I think it's actually a good segue, right? It is to talk about it. So, and then this would be a task state transition table, right? So this talks about when it's in the requested state, you'd be allowed to transition to received, accepted, rejected, or cancelled, right? And so this kind of takes that diagram and talks about, well, what is this state for? So when they're in requested state, indicating formal request for a diagnostic service is ready to be fulfilled by a filler, right? And from there, you should be able to go received, accepted, rejected. In received, a potential performer has claimed ownership of the task and is evaluating whether to perform it. Task is acknowledged by the filler. Some workflows may not distinguish between received and accepted. In such cases, they may transition directly to request for accepted. So this is kind of giving that guidance on how it is. And then this could be turned into an implementation to say, how am I going to enforce these rules? So the IG is not going to say how you do that, but this would give you the guide for how, what you would support. And absolutely, this needs to be in the IG because it needs to provide that guidance. At the moment, all we've got is a value set and that has these states, but that's where this guidance in the IG will support it. Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Can any of those conditions be formalized in FirePath as arguments that can be checked mechanically?
I think there is potential for that, but for our release 1, right, that's a step too far for us. Trying to have a way to implement that.
There is no mechanism to refer to the previous. So we can't state these as constraints, because in constraint language you can only refer to the consistency within the data set. So we can talk about, you can only use this status with this business status, or only use, those kind of relationships. What you can't do is refer back to the current version of the resource as opposed to the update that you're proposing. You can't create a computational rule which is defined in the IG to do that. So the only way is to provide guidance. We could certainly, I think, include in the table a FirePath expression that would enable evaluation, and then, encourage the implementations to use those FirePath expressions to evaluate correctness.
That was
but
what I meant. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, we could do that. That's no real issue. It's just so we have to come up with our syntax then for previous and current, which is already there in R4B subscriptions. So in R4B subscriptions, you do have the power to express the differences between the previous and the updated change in the subscription model. So we could in theory reuse that.
So I think that was a really good question. But yeah, this is essentially as part of the capability statement saying to the filler, we would expect you to be updating task. All right. This doesn't have all the business rules on how and what and the like in it, but it is saying that you should have the capability to be updating the task, which is a key part of our eRequesting traceability for fulfillment. Any other questions or comments on this one? No. Would anyone like to motion to accept this change?
Sure, Michael. Adrian.
Great, thanks, Adrian. We have a second.
I'm happy to second it, Rosemary.
Thanks, Rosemary. Any other questions, comments before I launch the vote? Launch the vote then. Oh, I'm still sharing. Hang on, let's see. Relaunch poll. Okay, you should see a vote now. So this is to add the child support update to the resource for the filler. Okay, we can get a couple more votes in. I think that number's up there now. So I'll end that in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I'll end that poll. And so we have 18 plus 1 in the chat, 19 affirmative, 0 negative, and 6 abstain. So that motion has passed. Thank you. Now, I think this is the first time ever we have got through all the agenda early for today's meeting. So I swear that's the first time ever for eRequesting. So I'm actually happy to open the floor to anyone. If anyone has anything that they've got some questions they've been sitting on, or you have some issues that you haven't had a chance to discuss with the TDG, the floor is open. I'm happy to take any comments, questions about anything. Even if it's, can we have a look at this? Can you explain something? Because we do have 15 minutes if we want it. Yeah.
Is there a technical design for testing the interactions, like a proxy where you would see the interactions as they go through a central point so you can see where an issue arises in coordination? Like, is there a planning for a component that would do that?
It has been talked about. It's been talked about in the context of AU Core Inferno testing and the like as well, is actually having a client proxy. So it has been brought up in that would be something that potentially eRequesting could look at the moment, or could look at in the future as well. So when we do get to a point of looking at some sort of formal test tools to support eRequesting around Inferno, AU Core was much simpler, where you just had a requester and a responder, and most of the focus was all on server capability. We have a much more complex ecosystem for eRequesting. And I mean, to answer your question, I think there is a role there for some form of proxy to do this. It's not something that Spark has had the capacity to look at for eRequesting yet, but that would make sense, being able to do exactly what you're talking about there and sort of formalize that testing. I think it's definitely an aspirational goal of being able to have some tools like that to support eRequesting would be good. So talking about the next meetings, like I said, we have 2 more meetings before ballot. So the next meeting, we have the opportunity for some informative changes, any last minute changes, and then we'll go into a final review on that meeting before ballot, which is we'll probably do a full walkthrough of the IG. We'll go through the ballot process, how that works, what we're going to be doing, because our work doesn't stop here. As soon as we get into ballot, straight after ballot, we'll see how we go for that 14th of August one. But we will start triaging and going through issues as they've raised. So the ballot is open for a number of weeks, but as soon as we have issues for the TDG to look at, we'll start bringing them to the TDG. And so our work through ballot over the next few months will be about resolving issues that have been raised in ballot. So the co-chairs will triage them, we'll develop proposals, we'll bring them to the TDG for discussion and vote. We will have likely lots of e-votes for the simpler items that can be voted on out of session, and then the more complex ones can be discussed in meetings. So we're coming to the end of the development, but now we're going to move into the refinement with ballot. So exciting times ahead, but I think everyone should be congratulated on getting us to where we are. It's been a long road to get eRequesting to this point, but I'm extremely happy about where we are and what we've achieved. And now the next process is getting us to publication for release 1. So that will be exciting. I'm looking forward to it. So if anyone's got anything else, we're happy to talk about it now, but otherwise we'll give 10 minutes back for the first time and probably last time ever, maybe. We'll see how it goes.
See what an Angus-free meeting can do?
Oh, is that what it was? There we go. Great one. All right, well, thank you, everyone. It's a good meeting, great achievements, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks.
Thanks, see you later.